Hey everybody, welcome to the stream. My name's Josh Herman. Super excited to be here with you all today doing a little bit of sculpt and a little session on ArtStation's channel. Uh, Again, my name's Josh Herman. If you don't know who I am, if you don't know who I represent, I work with Noman. If you don't know what Noman is, it's a school in Hollywood, California, based on and teaching visual effects for games, animation, and the visual effects industry. We've been around for about 25 years, and we got a lot of really good grads working on a lot of really cool stuff. So we're going to jump into it pretty quickly. Let me show you some stuff real quick. I'm going to show you share my screen with you really quickly. This is our web page here, so you can go ahead and take a look at this if you're interested in anything Noman related. And feel free during the stream today to ask me any Noman related questions. Noman.edu is where you go for that. And you can scroll around here, check out our academic options. We have portfolio prep, we have individual courses, we have a 2-year full-time program, and we have an accredited 4-year BFA degree. So depending on any of those, if you have any interest in that, please feel free to contact me or to reach out to somebody through the website. Additionally, we do a lot of stuff in streaming ourselves. So if you want to check out our YouTube page, please feel free to do that. Noman School, excuse me, on YouTube. We do a bunch of streams every week as well, similar to what you're going to see today. But if you're into this kind of stuff, I hope that you can enjoy what we're working on today. I figure that since it is pretty close to Halloween, we're just a couple days away, I'm going to sculpt in Zbrush today. And I figured there's nothing better, more Halloweeny than a pumpkin. So we'll do a jack-o'-lantern today. I did this pre-stream just a little bit, and I'll show you kind of what I've set up. So if you wanted to follow along and kind of see how I've done this, you're more than welcome to. I'll show you very quickly how I made the pumpkin, and let's start with that, and I'll show you one of the features that I made. I ended up duplicating the object here, and if I sculpt inside of this, I can actually basically see to the inside of the pumpkin, which means that we can kind of create a fun jack-o'-lantern shape, and with that we can kind of see to the inside as if it's illuminated, and if we want to do an illustration or something with that later, we can. If you're wondering how I did this, it's pretty straightforward. I basically created a sphere. I used the radial symmetry, which is going to be up in here. You can turn on radial symmetry by hitting this R, and actually use the Y option here, and you'll see that gives me a ton of these different points around this sphere. And then if I carve into this, it's going to do it all around the object. I have a mask on right now, so that's why that's not doing it everywhere. There we go. And you can create some fun shapes this way, but it's really easy to just basically make some lines to do a pumpkin-y style shape. I made a little cylinder here to make this the stem of the pumpkin, and then I duplicated it. So if I hit solo mode here, which just isolates the object, you can go down and you see I actually just duplicated the pumpkin inside. Now what this is actually doing is I've set it over on the right hand side to be a subtractive object, which means that it's going to be booleaned or subtracted from the inside of this pumpkin, another shell. And then to visualize that, up in the top left I hit live boolean. So if you want to follow along, all you got to do is make a sphere, make it into a pumpkin shape, duplicate your object, scale it down slightly, and then turn on live boolean. And that means that whenever you sculpt, you'll be able to see the inside of whatever your object is, which is kind of fun. I'm going to turn off the radial symmetry. So we'll go over here and go back to our normal symmetry so I can sculpt something with a face. I've also made it so that when I sculpt with some of the brushes that they change color. You know, when you sculpt into like the skin of a pumpkin, it kind of turns a different color. So this is going to kind of simulate that. And then if we push far enough, it'll go to the inside. And so we should be able to pretty quickly make some fun pumpkin shapes. So if we want to do something more extreme, right, we can do something kind of like this relatively quickly. But we're going to spend a little bit more time. We're probably going to sculpt for about an hour or so today on more of an extreme version of a pumpkin. Should be fun. I'm going to attempt to only work subtractively, meaning not additively, meaning I can add to the shapes as here, as you kind of see, right? But that's not really how a pumpkin works when you carve a pumpkin. So I'm going to try to only subtract, which is going to be a challenge for me, but I think it'll be a fun thing. So if you guys have any suggestions or things that you like to sculpt in pumpkins, please let me know. And again, if you have any questions while we're working today, please feel free to ask. I have 2 colors selected. I want to make sure that it's a different enough color from the inside of the pumpkin when I'm working. So I'm going to choose this one. Make sure I have that. This feels like to me like the inside of the pumpkin has like a light in it a little bit more than the other one. So let's get started. I was thinking about doing a zombie or something like a goblin or something kind of creaturey or creepy for today's stream. So let's just start blocking out a face. I figure we'll start just kind of by doing some light carving. I like to do the Damien Standard brush, which is a really, really excellent brush inside of Zbrush. And I'm going to start carving almost like I'm sketching, like if you're drawing lines on the pumpkin. So I'm not entirely sure what I'll be working in or what I'll be making exactly, but we'll figure it out. What program is this? We're working in Zbrush today. So maybe we could do like a very classic. I could also just mask off stuff. Holding down Control, you can mask. And so I could do like, like what you would see like in a very traditional pumpkin. So if we wanted to do something like that, that should be relatively easy. And I was playing around with this pre-stream. Let's do like the spiky teeth or something. So I'll block out the overall shape here, right? And then I'll inverse my mask. And we could like start putting teeth in this. Very, very quickly. Not going to go too extreme on this. I'm going to push it in there. And that could give us a cool pumpkin shape. And I was playing around with this really quickly, and we could probably set up several of these. So if we wanted to like snapshot, didn't really work the way I expected, but put a bunch of them around. It should be able to work. Kind of like this. There we go. Seems like I'm having weird graphical errors right now, but that's always fun. But we could do a couple of these later, which could be a nice way to like have a big pumpkin maybe, and then have a couple other ones that are going to be different. So it gives you kind of a nice setting to start from. Cyberpunk themed pumpkin is a request. Interesting idea. How would you do a cyberpunk themed pumpkin? I don't know what a cyberpunk themed pumpkin would be, to be honest with you. I'm going to kind of block out where some eyes would be. We'll start with this. I thought it could be interesting if like some of the pumpkin itself is kind of carved and you could see the skin of the pumpkin. And then like the eyes, just the eye part of the pumpkin is this lighter color. We could kind of explore with that. You see a lot of people do that around, Halloween, where they kind of use the multiple textures and layers of a pumpkin to do something. I could also use some normal painting, meaning I could just come in here and paint any of these colors, and that could work well as well. It would be nice to sculpt the pumpkin cover. Like the Jack Skellington? Is that what you're mentioning? All right, let's just start. Let's get some eyes in here. This is probably where they'll end up going. We'll carve in. Let's do like a zombie nose. And we can obviously adjust this as much as we see fit. So I'm going to block this in. I'm going to block in a general mouth. And you know what? Actually, I'm going to undo all that because I want to have a second one of these for later in case I do decide to do any of these other little pumpkins. So I'm just going to hide the one up top. Essentially, I'm saving another iteration of this file. I'm also going to actually save my file before I get started so that it's ready to go. What about a scared pumpkin? I like that idea. We'll do that as one of like the little the traditional jack-o'-lanterns at the end. We'll put a couple there. So let's get something more scary, maybe something more creaturey. So let's get some eyes going. This is probably where the eyes will go. This could be some sort of a mouth maybe could be in here. Maybe we'll just do a bunch of different jack-o'-lanterns, like a jack-o'-lantern scene. Could be fun. Or a flirty pumpkin. Oh, you mean the top cover? Oh, yeah, we could totally cut. You could do a little cut thing where it's kind of cut. I think I have my mask on still. I did not. We'll mask this later. But yeah, you could totally do like a cut thing where it's like the top of the pumpkin is cut. And we could even try removing that or making it look like there's, something in the middle. All right, so let's start with this kind of a thing. Maybe like a little nose will go there. And I'm just using this brush realistically just as like a sketching brush. And then I'm going to switch to my other. This is called the clay buildup brush, in case you don't know what many of the brushes are in Zbrush. This is a nice carving brush, a form building brush. Let me make sure my mask is still on. Yeah, it is not. The reason I want my mask on is you see that when I start pushing through the object here, it's actually affecting the back of the pumpkin, which I don't want. So I'm going to undo all that, mask this section, show everything, and I'm just going to hide the mask. It's still there, but I can't actually sculpt on that area. And that means that when I push through this area, I can create the thickness that we're talking about in the wall of the pumpkin, but it's not going to be, too intense. All right. Let's get some mouth shape going on in here. And what's nice is we can always just pull this back, or we can add to this. I've also set up a morph target here, so I can just return to the original shape of what the pumpkin was. Looks like it also colored it on accident, but that's okay. So if I ever want to go back to the original shape, I have that set up for me as well. And let's just start carving. I don't think I want the nose to have too much light in it, so I'm going to try to avoid that if possible. I do like these little kind of beady eyes, so I'm going to almost drill that all the way into the center. And then we'll kind of carve around this little area here. We can add more detail to this later if we need to, but I can also paint in detail. So right now we're just blocking out some shapes. We're not really looking for specifics as far as what it could be. I'm considering even, you see some pumpkin carvers kind of just do a whole skim off of the top, and they actually just sculpt in the thickness of the pumpkin, which is really cool. I love the look of that, so I might do that as well. My computer's taken off over here. I don't know why it's doing that. But that's okay. I don't know if you can hear my fans booting up. Let's see. Where did you learn your skills? Did you teach or do you teach any classes at Noman? I actually went to Noman. I'm a graduate of Noman. I graduated in 2009. I'm originally from Colorado, so I moved out here in 2007 in Los Angeles to go to school and kind of, perfect my skills or try to master my craft, I guess you could say. So I did the 2-year program at Noman, which took 2 years. And yeah, I learned a ton. I went to a previous school in Colorado, which was not the best school. Ended up getting shut down by the government. So if that tells you anything about it. And I ended up deciding afterwards to move out to California to basically, like I'm saying, kind of perfect. And I knew at that time I wanted to be a character artist in games or in film. And so that was when I kind of kept doing that. I'm going to basically remove all this little pumpkin skin on the top so that it feels more like the skin of a pumpkin, and we can sculpt just straight from this. And I do teach at Noman. I teach at Noman now, where the classes actually just started back in person. So we've been, or were, obviously everybody's dealing with pandemic things and has been for a while now, but we just went back to in-person classes this term, so which is exciting for us. because we had been virtual for 6 quarters, which is about a year and a half. And so now this is the first time in a year and a half that we're back on campus, and we're all kind of able to start having classes in person and get to meet students in person, which is just so cool because, we hadn't been able to do that in so long. It's so great to be able to connect and network and see people that you've only known virtually, through webcams and stuff like that. So it's been really, really awesome to be able to do that. I'm going to isolate this section here just for a second. And I'm going to start maybe making some kind of a sunken eye socket in this sculpt. I take some time sculpting. Tiago from YouTube is asking, how much time has it taken for you to make complex things in 1 hour, considering the best design? That's a really good question. I think speed is something that people talk a lot about, especially in sculpting or concepting or designing. And it is important to a certain degree, especially if you want to be a 3D concept artist or 2D concept artist, whatever. But it's not the most important thing. If you do want to practice, if you want to get faster, the best way to get faster is just practice getting faster. And you can do that by basically just using a timer. I find that to be really, really useful, to be really, really helpful. And I've done that a lot where I'll say, I'm only going to, and you don't start with an hour. A lot of people see speed sketches and speed sculpts and all that kind of stuff. And they think, everybody's sculpting in an hour, so that's what I need to start in. But I think when you start sculpting, it's going to take you longer than an hour to make something, and that's okay. I think some people can get that kind of imposter syndrome when you're looking at other people's work, and it's just kind of like, you're kind of worried about what it's going to look like, and so-and-so says they did theirs in an hour or an evening, and I can't even do that in a week. That's normal. So practice, if it takes you a long time, if 8 hours is how long it takes you to make a head, that's fine. Or a piece of art, that's fine. Next time, try to do it in 7. And the next time, try to do it in 6. And next time, try to do it in 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. And with that, you'll learn, some cool techniques, and you'll learn ways to kind of speed up your workflow. I think I am going to make a little nostril in this thing. You'll find corners to cut that make you faster. But as kind of, I think, part of what the question was asking is, you start cutting corners, and now you're not necessarily doing the best design. So you kind of have to do a couple different things, and that one of those is focus on design and then focusing on speed, and those are not the same thing. When you work fast, sometimes your sole intention is to work fast, right? Your sole intention is to only focus on speed. And that's fine, again, to a certain extent, but I don't think that we want that to be what we do every single time. I'm going to switch my matte cap. Ooh, that's very different than I thought it was going to look like. We'll go back to this one. I'm going to change this eye shape a little bit. Looks like we got some people joining. Hello, welcome to the stream. Let's kind of make a shape like this. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with the mouth, so we're going to have to figure that out here. I kind of just made a shape, as you can kind of see. Not the most flattering shape, so let's kind of bring in some other elements here. I can also go back to my morph target brush, which will basically, the color stays, but it will bring back some other things. Ooh, I kind of like that. This sort of grimacing pumpkin is kind of interesting. So let's start from here and give it some lips or something. What was it like working at Marvel? Good question, Joe. Working at Marvel, in case nobody knows my background, you know what? Let me just pull up in my ArtStation really quick, and people that might give people questions or things to ask about. This is my ArtStation page. You can search for me at Droids for Sale. And this is a lot of the work that I worked on. I've worked at places like Legacy Effects, which is formerly known as Stan Winston Studios. I worked at Marvel Studios for about 5 years, creating a lot of characters like Iron Man, polymodeling these, sculpting these in Zbrush. working on characters like the Hulk, working on characters like the Vision, Ultron, Groot. I was the key or main designer for Groot for the adult version of Groot. Thanks, thank you, Kate, for the following. Doing stuff like this in Zbrush. A lot of cool stuff that I got to work on there. So I ended up working at Marvel for about 5 years in the visual development department. If you don't know what the visual development department is, it's the department that has a lot of work in the art of books. So if you're looking at any of those Marvel Art of Iron Man books, Art of Thor books, Art of Captain America books, all that kind of stuff, that's where you can kind of find this. A lot of my work and a lot of people I worked with. The department has been headed up by people like Andy Park, Ryan Meinerding, of course, and then Charlie Wynn as well. So responsible for a lot of the characters that are in the MCU from a design standpoint. And then my work would be handed off to the visual effects teams to turn into awesome work. So feel free to check out my ArtStation. While you're checking that out today, if you got any questions on any of the pieces, feel free to ask. And I'm happy to kind of reference this and use it as a talking point. So how was it like working at Marvel? That was kind of Joe was asking. It was fantastic. It was a great, really, really great group. The group over at Marvel is just awesome. From a conceptual standpoint, they're some of the most elite concept artists, in the industry. And they've been, as compared to standard art departments on movies or other things, it's the same group all the time. And that's not necessarily common in films, right? In an art department for bigger movies, often what will happen is that art department will, let's put some lines down here. Oh yeah, there we go. Maybe a little far, getting a little fishy. Art departments will staff up for a single film, and then afterwards they basically dissolve, right? Because the pre-production is over. And so they go and they work on other projects. And then if a sequel comes up, they try, typically to hire the same people again, but they're not always available because they got hired on other projects or shows or something. And that's unfortunate because those people probably created a really cool world and cool enough to get a sequel made, right? Whereas Marvel has been doing things differently. So they saw the value in having a consistent art group. And visual development is something that's more common in things like in animation than it is in film. And Marvel kind of took a leap to make this team. And so that meant that the people who were designing, your Iron Mans and your Thors and your Captain Americas and all those awesome characters were primarily the same group and have been working there for a very long time. Some for well over a decade. Like Ryan, for example, has been there for the very, very beginning, which is awesome to have one crew, right? That's just kind of working on the same stuff. Creates a really consistent design language, and that was a really fun group of people to work with. What's the most important tool to learn as a character artist? For example, XGen. Really good question, Ivania. What's the most important tool? That's a really good question. I would say probably the most important tool for character art is probably going to be Zbrush, which is, again, what we're working in today. The reason I say that is just because a lot of the work can or will be done in Zbrush, right? So a lot of the sculpting can be done. A lot of the retopology can be done. It can be done in different ways, potentially faster, potentially more effective or precise, depending on the way that you want to work or what the needs are in a DCC, like a Blender or a Maya or an Autodesk 3ds Max or whatever your favorite program to use is. But you can't really do as much of the sculpting and the big creative work in that way in those programs. You can. I mean, I've made, over the course of my career, I ended up making, at Marvel specifically, 13 different versions of Iron Man between war machines, Hulkbusters, all this that kind of different stuff. A lot for Iron Man 3, if you're wondering, for the end battle sequence. But, you know, and a lot of that was done in Maya, poly modeling stuff in Maya, sculpting things straight in Maya, and that was fun. But the bigger for organic characters, ZBrush is kind of king for what most people think of when they think of a character artist's job. So I think the first piece of software I would probably pick is going to be ZBrush. XGen's great, obviously for grooming. It's probably the most industry standard right now. I'm going to bring some of this stuff back. And I'm actually going to turn my standard brush into a painting brush so I can just bring some of this to be that non-fleshy color there. But yeah, XGen is fantastic, obviously. What else would be good? Marvelous Designer. If you're doing costume characters, Marvelous is really, really good at that, obviously. So it's hard to say. Have you ever tried sculpting in Blender? No, I've never tried sculpting in Blender. I've actually never used Blender. It is a program that's kind of in my sights as far as something I'm interested in using for the future, because it obviously has a ton of cool stuff. There's a lot of people talking about it right now, and that does seem pretty cool to learn. The real-time rendering stuff that's going on in there is obviously amazing. There's just a lot of really cool tools that are going on with it. Its poly modeling tools seem to have come a long way. Maya's poly modeling tools, to be frank, are falling behind, and they were never necessarily up to date to begin with. So I think modelers and asset creators are going to find a lot of really great things in Blender if they aren't already. Oh yeah, let's do the Sunken Eye thing I was talking about. I might add a little bit of a secondary color to this in a minute. But yeah, Blender does seem cool, but I've never sculpted in it before. I'm trying to pick some primary forms here. Now that I've kind of got a sense of where this pumpkin is looking, I kind of like it looking down at us, but I also kind of like this view as well. I might do like, might be like a pumpkin overlord. So like if these eyes, like what if we just, I'm going to try masking the eyes. This is what I was saying about doing, like, you can't go wrong with like a classic smoky eye. Oh, this is all masked back here. Let's mask that. And then what if we kind of just push this back a little bit? Since the live Boolean is on, if I just push this back, it's basically going to create a shape kind of like that. You can see the inside of this, which I should probably clip. Let's just clip that really quick. So I'm going to my clipping curve, and I'm going to just do this. Did I get it right? Pretty close. Pretty close. That'll be perfect. So now we can't see the stem on the inside because that's kind of annoying. All right, and I was looking at this. I kind of like these eyes. This is where we were before with these smaller eyes. I think I like the in-between maybe. And the live Boolean is a really cool feature that ZBrush introduced a little while ago, because essentially all you need to do is just push stuff back into the Booleaned area, and that's where you can get these fun features or fun happy accidents. And I think happy accidents is something that people talk about in art, and you can kind of find ways to search for them, find ways to hunt for them. And this is a fun way to do that. I'm going to hide my mask. I'm going to switch to a more kind of aggressive brush. And with these angry kind of eyes we have with the brows, I'm going to try to make this a slightly more angry eye shape. Just adding some angles to this, smoothing some of it. Yeah, that'll work pretty well. Yeah. That's starting to work. Let's keep some lines in here. I kind of got these lines coming from the sides like this. I'm going to continue some of that through here. I'm going to carve out a little bit more of the bottom of this. I saw Dune over the weekend. Actually, not over the weekend, 2 days ago, which is amazing. Getting a little Baron Harkonnen inspiration here. And then I do think that probably in about 15 minutes, I'm going to make a bunch of other little pumpkins that are going to live down at the bottom. Maybe we'll make some teeth for this thing too. Using the Inflate Brush here a little bit. The Inflate Brush is fantastic to create these kind of puckered wrinkles on things. What you can do to do that, if you've never used the brush before, it's already kind of happening naturally down here, which is awesome, is you can kind of come in here, make some lines, so whatever direction you want it to go. You can be pretty aggressive with this. I try to crisscross them a little bit. And then I'll use the Inflate Brush on those areas to add that little detail. Just add a little bit more. Looks like I got some things from the chat here. Is XGen only for Maya? I believe so. There might be plugins for 3ds Max or something like that, but I'm not 100%. In your opinion, what is the most important skill for aspiring concept artists? At the end of the day, concept artists are problem solvers. They're problem solvers. They solve ideas. And so you need to be able to communicate how you're solving an idea. Even if you're making a pretty picture or drawing or sculpt or whatever medium that you're using, at the end of the day, the reality is that you are solving a problem of what something should look like for a production. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, right? That is your job. Your job is to solve problems for productions, and you have to communicate that. So you can have the most beautiful art in the world, but if it's not solving the problems for people, you're not actually succeeding. So making sure that you're thinking through the ideas, that you're, bringing interesting and new ideas to the table, but also listening to feedback or listening to the briefs from what the initial conversations and stuff from the directors and producers are, because they're the ones who need the help there, right? They're the people whose problems you're solving. It's not necessarily the most important thing to have the best draftsmanship or know the most programs. That's all important stuff, and adding tools to your tool belt obviously is great, but it's not the most important thing. I'm going to try making some teeth. I'm going to try 2 techniques. First, I'm going to mask these areas, and I'm going to invert that mask. I'm going to just pull it out and see what this looks like. Not terrible. The kind of jaggedness is actually helping a little bit, and I kind of like that. Again, happy accidents. So let's add a couple more here. So one on this side, one on this side. Invert that mask. Pull it out a little bit. Give him a little rotation here. I'm going to smooth it very slightly as well. Yeah, there we go. I could add some more polygons here, and I'm debating it. If I do that, I'll lose my morph target, though, which I'm trying to keep right now. Let's see. Hey, Josh, I'm currently a 3D artist working in the gaming industry for 10 years now. My question for you is, what will be the best way to switch to 2VFX as a character creature artist? Good question. I think the best way to switch is to make your portfolio have more of that work in it. I don't know what your portfolio looks like, but people in film, people in VFX want to see that type of work. So similar to a game environment, if you want to see game level work, Not saying you have to completely remove your portfolio and start over from scratch. That's not what I'm saying. Just that you probably need a couple pieces in your portfolio that show that you can do film res work. And I think that can that can earn some confidence in the people who would be, making those hiring decisions. As somebody myself who has switched from games to film to games and film to games, that was one of the questions I got the most, which was, especially when first transitioning to games, was, have you ever worked on a game? Do you know how to make game characters? And this is the opposite of what you're asking, but that it's kind of the same question, because what they want to see is that you can do the work that they're doing at the studio. So if you have one piece of work that's high res, full frame character or creature with multiple UDIMs and 8K textures and just really beautiful work, then that's going to solve a lot of what they're kind of asking for, right? They're not looking for, at least I don't think they're necessarily asking for the most beautiful, portfolio of 12 to 15 different characters. I would hope not. Especially if you have 10 years of experience, they should see that you can do that. But this is one piece or a couple pieces that you've made for your portfolio to say, I want to get into VFX, and this is some of the work that I'm working on to do that. Have you ever faced motivation issues and how to get rid of lack of motivation to continue learning and doing 3D? Of course, yes, of course. I think that's one of the biggest things that all artists probably face, right? Lack of motivation, trying to fight that feeling of wanting to be lazy, of wanting to just sit and play video games, looking at amazing people's portfolios and being depressed, right, at how good everybody else is, and then looking at your portfolio and being annoyed that yours isn't there. Yeah, of course. I think probably every professional artist you've ever seen or know of deals with that, whether they say it or not. It's such a common thing, to be honest with you, it's so many people deal with that all the time. Well, how do I deal with it, I guess, is the follow-up to that. I like to take a break. I like to take a break. I like to go out. I like to travel. I like to see vacation. I like to camp. I like to do something different than what I would normally do. And I think that's a nice way to just break it up. And then also when you're if you're getting the point where I was saying, where you're looking at your portfolio and you're just not happy with it, or, you're kind of getting down on yourself, kind of evaluate it and see what kind of work you've been doing. Are you doing work that you're happy with? And I don't mean happy with meaning, are you happy with the outcome? But is it work that you got into this business or want to get into this business to begin with? Are you happy with, or generally, are you happy with your work? I think is an important thing. Is it something you like doing? And if it's not, pivot to do what you want. I think that's an important thing that people should do. Got a couple questions here. If I master sculpting in Blender, would I be able to master it in ZBrush? I don't know about that. I've never sculpted in Blender. There was a question about that earlier. I can't say for specifics. I can say that generally sculpting skills translate. So I can tell you that traditional sculpting skills translate to digital sculpting skills. So if you're into that, generally you should be fine. I wouldn't worry too much about that. At the end of the day, it's form, it's primary form, secondary form, tertiary form, anatomy. All that stuff is going to be what sculpting is all about. So I'm going to take this color in here. I'm actually going to take this inner pumpkin, and I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. And I'm just going to color fill object. That should brighten it up a little bit. It's a little lighter than I want it to be. I'm trying to make it pop just a little bit more. Since the inside of this is Booleaned, it's taking the Essentially, I have one pumpkin here, one pumpkin on the inside, and they're booleaning together. And that means that the inside, because it's being cut out, is taking the color of whatever the inside is. So I can adjust that pretty easily. And that's what we have, which is cool. Let's see, another question. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to be a keyframe artist for movies? Keyframes are super difficult, first off. But the thing about keyframes is that they're all about emotional moments. You know, if you can paint environments and you can paint characters and they're posed and they look great, the keys to a keyframe is it's usually about a character in an environment having or hitting an emotional beat in the movie, which is really important, the emotional beat in the movie. That you're selling that at the same point. So focus on your composition, focus on your posing, focus on your characters. Obviously, that's the key parts. But in a way, it's a beefed up storyboard, right? It's a mood piece. So don't forget that is one of the more important parts of a keyframe. And make sure you're selling the moment. We're getting a little autosave right here, which is usually something that annoys me, but I ended up having a crash the other day, and I hadn't autosaved, so now I'm welcoming autosave. Just pushing the proportions of this a little bit. Still want it to look like a pumpkin, like it could be something that could be sculpted from a pumpkin, but also not going to be super specific on if it doesn't. What would be the thing you or your team would primarily check in a character artist portfolio while hiring? If you're talking about games specifically, just really quality. Do you have some really quality characters? And then is there consistency to the quality of your characters? I think that's a general portfolio question that I think a lot of people aren't 100% on. Meaning that I'm going to try to make these eyes a little bit more aggressive, by the way, while I'm talking. Ooh, interesting. Maybe we'll do like a more extreme, almost kind of a venomy eye. Yeah. The consistency, I think, is a really important element to a portfolio, meaning if you have 5 characters or even less, 3 characters, 4 characters in your portfolio, and one of them is really excellent, but the other 3, we'll use 4, right? So one of them is really great, one of them is good, and the 2 of them are okay, right? When somebody looks at your portfolio, they're going to wonder why they're not all great, because they see that you have the potential to do great work. And that puts a question mark in somebody's head. So the biggest thing for portfolios is don't put question marks in the potential employer's head and in the potential art director, creative director's head, because you don't want to do that, because then they're wondering, were you really heavily art directed on that project and that's why that one looks good? Was it a fluke that one looks really good? Did you use starting assets to make that one look really good, right? And there's a bunch of questions that the answer to that is probably no, and it didn't turn out as good as the other ones. But it creates a scenario in which people are now going to be asking you a lot of questions or thinking a lot of questions. And you'd probably rather just not deal with that, right? Ideally. So don't make them ask questions. Similar to character artist portfolios, just have characters. That's probably another big thing. Just have characters in there. If I see a character artist portfolio and it's full of environments, effects, animations, a short film, a thesis short film or something like that, they're not like they're good. They may be stellar work, but they're not applicable to the position, right? They're not really something that a character artist needs to do during the job. So it's kind of moot. You can have one character in your portfolio and really stellar character, but if you have 5 environments on there, the question I'm wondering is, do you actually want to be an environment artist? So that's the kind of things I would ask. What do I think about the game industry and the 3D industry, I guess is what you're asking. I love them. I love working in them. Um, I think it's always evolving. And it's cool. I don't know if there's anything else I can really say to that one. Let's see what we got. You use Photoshop and Illustrator to edit your drawings. Bearing in mind you use a MacBook Pro Air, does my Photoshop editing lead to something? Or I don't really know what that question means. Hi, Josh. What motivated you to transition from film to games and or vice versa? And how did you plan the transition in terms of pieces needed to get hired? Good question. How did I plan the transition is the first part? What motivated the transition? Good question. This is not possible in a pumpkin, but that's okay. Unless the pumpkin was oddly shaped. And some pumpkins are, and that's fine. What motivated the transition? When I started out, I worked in practical effects at Legacy Effects. So my first game company I worked at was Naughty Dog. And I had always loved Naughty Dog. I had a bunch of friends that worked there. Brian Wynia was somebody who worked there. And Rich Diamont was somebody who worked there. And I was friends with both of them when I was graduating from Noman. So I wanted to work with them. I wanted to work on the games that they were working on. Uncharted 2 had been named Game of the Year, I believe, at the time. So I was just really interested in that. I'm a big gamer. I love playing games. And so that was kind of another reason to do that, right? And so I was just interested in it. And then I guess you're asking, how did I plan the transition? I ended up doing the character art test for Naughty Dog 3 times, failing 2 of those times. So the plan was to just work as hard as I could to get in, right? There wasn't really another way around that, except for just working hard and pushing until I could get in. And that's really all there was there. Wondering if I should put some smoke. What if we just nah, that's fine. I think I'm happy with this one. I think I'm going to make another one. So I'm going to save this really quick and see if this works for us. You do get asked a lot of questions when you transfer from position, or not position, genre, medium to medium, games to film and back and forth, which I was kind of asking about first. If you've never worked in a game before, you're going to get questioned about never working in a game before. And I think that's fair. A lot of people get upset, or I've heard people getting upset, they don't see their film experience or other experiences being viable. But when you're hiring people, you want to make sure that they can do the job when they come in. So, yeah, it's kind of the requirement. I'm hitting Make Boolean Mesh, which should, here we go. Now this is a separate object, which is one mesh. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to clone it into my scene in a second. But I've basically saved one of these off to the side. And now I'm going to hide what I've got going here. I'm actually not going to hide it. I'm just going to push it up one. Hide it, show this. Now I have another pumpkin, which is cool. And I can start sculpting this. I'm going to duplicate it again. And we'll make a bunch of other little pumpkins here. Just some fun, generic ones. So we'll do, we'll mask these to make the shapes. So do like a round. Turn down my focal shift so that my mask is a little cleaner. Pumpkins like this, right? Oh. Maybe we'll do like the mouth of the pumpkin, and it can be looking up. We'll have it like looking up at another pumpkin. Oh no. We'll just push this inwards. Since it's Booleaning, that should be pretty good there. I'm just going to make a Boolean mesh very quickly. It's going to pop it over here on our subtools. So we got another one there. I'm going to push this out of the way, hide this, duplicate this, and make another pumpkin. Let's see. What type of software could you use for this type of work? We're using Zbrush right now. That's the best one for sculpting, in my opinion. Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween to you. A pumpkin character should have a few chiseled mistakes. No? Oh, for sure. And there's many mistakes in these. They're just, maybe some of these little marks over here where they were missed. Oh, you know what? We should go back to this one. This is what I did here. But it would be kind of fun to make the lid or just quickly carve in the lid. I'll just do that. We'll color it with this color and then turn on RGB. And we'll turn up the RGB intensity. We'll turn the Z intensity way up, make it really small. Yeah, we'll just go like this is. Whenever I cut pumpkin lids, I just basically jam a butcher knife into it and make a randomly assorted shape so that it has a perfect key. That'll be fine. There we go. Cool. We have this one, and we have this one. Sorry, another blank one. So let's make another one. Let's do a triangle. Let's see, what programs do you use for textures? I like to use Quixel. It's been pretty great for really quick things. Roy is asking, hey Josh, just curious what you think makes for a great game environment portfolio, for example, showcasing breakdowns of the environment / props. What are things that are great to see presented? I think just a really nice making of is a nice thing to see. And what I mean by that is just like, the whole, we'll do a triangle eyeballs one. When you're working on an environment, there's so many different angles. So obviously I want to see a lot of great angles of it. I want to see some close-ups. If it's a big environment, I'd like to see how you did, is it modular? Show me how your textures are done. Just generally give me a nice breakdown of how it's done, along with some really beautiful shots. I don't really need to see, this is the speechless pumpkin. We'll invert this. It's easier to draw the masks this way sometimes. I don't really need to see a million things. I don't need to see textures for every single thing. But if you can show me a couple, right, that's important. It's important to, as we've been talking about portfolios for getting jobs, it's important to show an employer, potential employer, everything they need to be confident that if they were to hire you, that you would do the job well. But you also need to be respectful of their time. And I think that's something that people don't always catch right out of the way, is that, whatever position you're applying for is probably going to have hundreds of applicants, like hundreds. And so trying to find the best way to make this shape. What would be the best way? But there's going to be hundreds of applicants, right? And what that basically means is, I'll just do this square. And what that means is that the art directors for those are going to have like limited time to look through all of those portfolios. So I don't want to see a demo reel piece or something, or a walkthrough of your artwork that's going to take 10 minutes or 5 minutes to click through, right? It needs to be efficient. It needs to be fast. It needs to be just good enough to get it going, so that I can quickly and easily see what's going on in your piece, in your environments, and that I can have confidence in. So breakdowns, couple wireframes, couple textures, some nice shots, maybe a quick fly through. But that's really, I think, all you really need. Can I elaborate on the tests I did for Naughty Dog? I don't think they're necessarily under NDA, and they were also probably done a decade ago. So I can tell you what it was like then, but I would have confidence that it's probably very different than it is now. Um, Meaning, I would assume they've changed their character test in a decade. Um, you had to make a character with limited reference. It was a bust of a character. They didn't really give you a time frame. They didn't really give you expectations on what the texture sizes or anything like that should be. And I kind of think that was all part of the test, right? They wanted to see what you would do given limited insight. And yeah, it was basically that. You had as much time as you wanted, but you needed to submit something good. I think Naughty Dog is one of those places that is kind of above all else. Quality is the most important thing. So they want to see good quality. Making of as in a progression of shots, Roy? Not necessarily like the thought process, but, wireframes, textures, simple, asset individual parts of it has its own breakout, overall shots of the environment, maybe a quick fly through. I think that's what I'm kind of talking about as far as a making of. What are some good beginning programs and computers to run them on? Any off-the-shelf computer you get at a Best Buy or something like that is probably going to be fine to run a ZBrush or a Blender, especially when you're making your stuff at the beginning. Do I think a character artist portfolio should include both stylized and realistic characters? Good question. It's nice to have range, but you're limiting the depth at which you can go for those characters. Let's do a Cyclops. A big happy Cyclops. So if you do both, right, then you're just kind of limited, meaning you only have so much time to make in your portfolio, and certain places, certain employers are only really going to see one of those types. Some might want to see both, right? Some might want to see stylized work and realistic work. But if game certain like Naughty Dog's a good example, they're only going to want to see realistic work. Blizzard's realistically, except for Diablo now, they're only going to want to see stylized work. So you kind of have a limited options there. Let's just carve in. Try to spell out some words here. H. Let's make it a little smaller. Let's turn on our H. A. You don't have to listen to me spell this out. There's two L's, right? Halloween. Is that all visible? Kinda. Not the best. Huh? Let's work on this one a little bit. Should have been a smaller size, I think. This is like when you start cutting a pumpkin and you realize you chose the wrong size knife halfway through. Yeah, definitely should have done this size, huh? Let's redraw that, and I'll try to do that as I'm talking. What program do you use for retopology? I like to use Maya. Maya, I think, has come a long way. You're trying to do the video for visual effects, and on our page, something about I don't know. Sorry, I can't answer your question about the cost for the dragon. Is there any underrated software that you would use that you would like to be a standard in the industry? I don't know about that. Any software that I would like to be in the industry? Not that I can think of. Not that I can think of. How do you match reference from top to bottom exactly without any difference? Without any difference. A lot of hard work, a lot of patience, honestly. The thing about modeling something from reference, whether it's a likeness or whether it's a, character, and a complex character or something like that, it's not necessarily all about making it look good from one angle. You're always having to rotate. And the reality is that when you can have the best concept artist in the world, and they can be so excellent at perspective and be excellent draftsmen, but they're almost never 99.9%, right? Never going to get it exactly perfect because they're people, and not every piece of perspective is going to be perfect. So you're never going to be able to match it 100%. Even if you do a likeness, you're never going to match it 100%. You would be shocked as to what a scan of a person looks like. It's what they actually looks like. So just kind of accept that, I think. That there's going to be concessions, and that's okay. But I like to work in the round. I like to always be rotating, making sure it looks good from multiple angles. Nice thing about making a digital pumpkin carving is we can do these little pieces here that you don't have to hang on with a toothpick. Let's see. If someone has 1 year of experience as a 3D artist, what would you expect from that person's portfolio needed to get a job as a 3D character artist at Naughty Dog? If you don't have a ton of experience and you want to work at a place like Naughty Dog, I mean, that's a hard one because I don't know what your portfolio looks like, but you probably have a little bit more work to go if you only have 1 year of experience at all, meaning a student with only 1 year of experience. If you have 1 year professional experience, that's a good question. I think just portraying and showing yourself in the best possible light is probably the most important thing. I'm just going to put all these pumpkins in here. Did we add this one already? Yeah. Let's hide all these. We'll put our Happy Halloween pumpkin. We'll make this one the biggest one. Whoa, that was bigger than I thought. It's our little pumpkin patch. Give him a little rotation. Not all pumpkins sit evenly, right? So he'll kind of be photobombing this pumpkin here. A little tiny pumpkin over here, maybe. Rotate this thing. Oh. Let's keep that on. Make all these visible now. These two are similar, so I'm going to move this one on the other side. Is there space for 2D art in productions nowadays, or is 3D the only way to go? Absolutely, there's room for 2D. There's a lot of people doing 3D. I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot of people doing 3D, and 3D is definitely catching on, especially in the concept art development and all that kind of stuff. But 2D is always going to be king regarding speed. Just to make, imagine you need to make 50 options for something, right? There's no way that somebody doing 3D is going to be able to make 50 options, rough options, faster than a 2D person will, right? So the whole idea of being able to ideate and just quickly come up with ideas and options and things like that, 2D is so much faster than other ones in that regard. Let's make this a tall pumpkin. Let's turn on the floor too. Turn off perspective. Clearly none of these pumpkins are all sitting on the same level, which is what I kind of want to do real quick. Just mash these around. Have these seated roughly in the same area here. Turn back on our perspective. Turn off our floor. Let's move that big pumpkin in a little bit. They all kind of look like they're the same shape and size, which I'm not super happy about because they are or were. So I'm just going to basically take this snake hook brush, just kind of warp them a little bit. Maybe this one's like a little bottom heavy. What technique should be used for ZBrush to match something as close as possible? Using Spotlight is good, bringing in images into Spotlight. You can also use your see-through thing, which goes to your desktop. I've tried that before. It works okay. Not amazing, but it works decently well. Let's see what we got here. As an artist, how do you go about managing your energy and time whenever it comes to practicing? I kind of find it hard to do. I'm a night owl. That's a good question. Maybe it's good for you to try what I was kind of mentioning earlier, which would be, giving yourself a time limit. So maybe you are only going to work for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. The other thing that might be helpful is to have a very specific goal. So, I'm only, I'm going to learn a thing, but it's a very small, finite thing, rather than saying, oh, let's do a huge character or a huge environment that's what this project is going to be about, right? That's fine and that's cool, but it's not necessarily going to help you learn because you might get exhausted on the project. So if you're just trying to learn a new tool or a new thing, it's okay to do that in a smaller project. It doesn't always, not everything you have to do, not everything you do is a portfolio piece. What I'm working on right here is not a portfolio piece, right? It's something I'm doing for fun. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun, but it doesn't need to go in my portfolio. I don't need to spend hours and hours and hours of time making it be a portfolio piece. But I can learn some cool stuff, right? I learned that, oh, I like the idea of this pumpkin looking like it's running away. I learned that I could make a quick Boolean, and I could, how I could try some sculpting while painting at the same time techniques, and, some stuff like that. Let's swap this one around. If you're over here, oh, looks like it's running away. Do I like that more? Kinda. So yeah, I think really what I'm saying is like, don't put that pressure on yourself to feel like you have to do that, to feel like everything you're going to work on has to be perfect. Right? It doesn't. It certainly does not have to be perfect, especially not every time. And if you're learning, accept that not everything's going to be a portfolio piece. That's just not how it works. At Noman, we tell all of our students, in the first 2 terms, 3 terms, 4 terms, especially if you're doing the 2-year program, you're not making a portfolio piece in those terms. You're learning how to use software. You're learning how to do certain skills, right? And that's important to put yourself in that mindset. You're looking at my portfolio and you're wondering, did I also work on real steel? I did. Yes, I worked. That was the very first professional project I worked on was real steel. So I worked on at Legacy Effects. I worked on Noisy Boy, Ambush, and the gloves of the main character, Adam. And that was a fun project. Each of the characters ended up being 3D printed into several pieces and stuff like that. We'll put this here, actually. and they were turned into 8.5 foot tall animatronic, hydraulically operated puppets, which was really fun. So I got the chance to do that, and that was really cool. So yeah, it was a super fun project. Now I got to change some of these, huh? Some of these little stems are looking a little weird because they're all exactly the same. I should have. Is that one mesh? It is one mesh. But they're polygrouped, so I can very quickly. After these, I'm going to be done, by the way. Um, just We'll destroy our mesh very quickly and just mangle these pumpkin stems into something that is slightly different so that they don't look like exact clones of each other. Just rotate this one. We'll just spin that one. Oh, I have my selection thing on. And then we could probably keep this one. Add a little difference to this one so that it doesn't look exactly the same. I think that's probably going to wrap up my sculpt for today, but I'm happy to answer a couple more questions really quick. You need to practice gesture drawing to get better with drawing characters. Gesture drawing is amazing. There's a bunch of online sites you can use to do that. So gesture drawing is great. Set a timer for yourself. Really, really great way to improve. Can I talk about my role as a concept artist / sculptor at Marvel? How does it work? Is it similar to what Simon Lee does for movies? Similar, I guess. A little different because it was in the visual development department, not necessarily in the art department for a film. What's different there is my job was to work with the visual development team to sculpt characters, but present them. Simon Lee leaves them more sculpturally, and so my sculpts were more brought to a more finite level so they could be handed off to visual effects so that they could ideally start working on them. And I did both modeling and sculpting, depending on what it was. Meaning, sometimes it was concept, sometimes it was modeling or sculpting an existing concept that somebody within the team has made. So most of the Iron Man stuff you see, actually all the Iron Man stuff you see, is all somebody else's concept art, whether it's Ryan Meinerding or Phil Saunders or Andy Park or somebody else doing one of those. Have I used the floor for reference and what can be adjusted to working faster for using it? Yeah, I use that to basically make sure that the floor is consistent, right? So that it's always kind of in the same place, and that when I turn off perspective, ideally the pumpkins, or in this case the pumpkins, were sitting in the same area. So yeah, that's kind of what I use that for. I guess we could turn this one if we want to. Ooh, I like that direction more. Yeah. That kind of a thing. We could very quickly append a cube to this, and then we'll probably wrap this up. I'm going to save this because right now this is its own project, which was not saved as anything else. So I'm just going to quickly add our own floor to this. Some form of like a quick pumpkin patch. I don't know how big that is. Okay, not bad. And then I think we'll be done. So what happens when you get into a project you're enjoying, right? You're like, oh, I'm done. No, I'm done. One more second. Well, just let me do this one thing, and then I'll be done. And then, one thing turns into 5 things, turns into 10 things, and all of a sudden you've done 50 things or 1,000 things, and you're still working on the project. So, is what it is, though. I honestly don't have a problem with it. I actually kind of enjoy that. All right, let's add some subdivision levels to this. Actually, we'll just make it a Dynamesh object. Hopefully it's not crazy high. Not too bad. Pretty good. Mask it, hide the mask. Turn off polygroups, show everything. And I'll just use my clay buildup brush to very quickly just add some texture. So they can be sitting on something, or, whether there's whatever it is. You can use a lot of different tools for this. And I'll probably just turn it into this color as well. So there's something down there. We're going to lighten it up a little bit. That's a little too much. Looks like I could be a 3D model diorama. It could be. That was kind of the goal, right? It's just something kind of fun and fast to, get in the Halloween spirit. I don't know if anybody's got costume ideas already for this upcoming Halloween. I will be a skeleton, as I often am. I'm going to use the blob brush here. Let's see if this works. Yeah, it can be okay. Let's see. Let's just use the standard brush at a really high intensity. Yeah, that'll be fine. And we're just going to basically make some vines. Just going to kind of do this to create some texture, some more shapes in here. Again, oh, I'm adding texture, and then I'm going to be done. And then I'm adding texture, and I'm going to be done. I always struggle ending a stream and ending a project, especially a quick one, because there's always so much you could do. Right? You could always go a little bit further. You could always do a little bit more just to kind of finish it off. But we're going to have to wrap this up here in just a minute. All right, that's probably fine. Here we go. Turn on our perspective. Yeah, the perspective is interesting. It's kind of slightly different. Get this framed up nicely. There we go. Go ahead and save that one last time. We can do a quick BPR render and just see what that looks like. It's probably going to shade the inside of the pumpkin, so I don't think it's going to look like I want it to. Yeah, see? Shading the inside. We'll leave it with this. Haven't seen as many Halloween artworks this year. I agree. Yeah, I haven't seen that many. It's kind of interesting that it's just kind of been a little less Halloween-y in general, right? Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining the stream. I really appreciate it. Again, Josh Herman from Noman. Check out noman.edu if you have any questions. Get in contact with one of our admissions advisors. You can book an appointment, and they work more like tutors or mentors to help you work on your portfolio. You can also check out our YouTube page where we do streams similar to this, sculpting sessions, instructor spotlights, makings of, and events like that. So please feel free to check out that kind of stuff. And I really appreciate ArtStation for giving me the chance to kind of hang out here with y'all, answer some questions. Thank you for the time. And it has been a pleasure being able to stream with you all. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I'll see you soon.